All right, welcome back to Men Pursuing More. I'm your host, Roger Maupin, and today I want to welcome Andre Venter to the podcast. So, Andre, hey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Roger. It's a pleasure to be here and nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And just to let everybody know, today's episode is packed with insights from Andre's journey as a world-class rugby player, international vocalist, and a man walking boldly in faith. So before we dive into your story, this is part of your story, but let's talk about some sports. So your favorite athlete growing up, I know you grew up in South Africa. So who was your favorite athlete and what is it about them that kind of inspired you when you were growing up?
Man, when you grow up in South Africa, you start playing rugby when you're like, I think, not even able to think straight, barefoot in the cold. And so I would say the first sports idols that normally comes up for South African men should be a rugby player. And there's so many of them. In my case, there was a guy called Donnie Gerber. Now, Donnie Gerber we called Donnie, he played number 13, sometimes 11, sometimes 14. But at 13, he's world renowned as an outside center for scoring the most tries as an outside center, having the highest average tries per match. But he had a very special way of playing the game. He was super fast. And we call it a sidestep. I'm not sure what you call it in American football. It's also a step, like maybe just a step. We call it a sidestep. And that guy had a lethal sidestep. He was sidestep so quickly that if you don't concentrate, you can just tear off a ligament or break a bone because he changes direction. And I actually looked at some of his videos again this week, and I was just blown away to think like, even for me today, there's not even a player like him. So he was really, when I was really young, it was really Donnie Gerber. It was quite a sports icon for me. And as I grew older, rugby was obviously a big thing. There was a guy playing for New Zealand. His name was Jonah Lomu. I think he has the record of the most tries scored for an international rugby player. I think it's 169 or something like that. I stand corrected. 118 kilograms doing the 100-meter dash in 40 or less than 4 seconds. A 40-meter dash in less than 4 seconds, I think. Just a huge athlete, incredible man. So yeah, but Donnie Gerber, that's my sports idol from a young age, definitely.
Now, to share with the listeners, because some are listening in and may not know a lot about rugby. Yeah. What are a few takeaways from rugby? Like someone might ask, oh, how is the scoring? What about the field? Is it like a football field or like American football field? Not a soccer field, but a couple key rules that maybe if we're watching it going, oh, okay, now I get that.
Yes. First of all, I think the most important difference is it's much more flowing than American football. And you can't throw the ball forward. That's the biggest thing I would say. If I'm running with the ball and I want to give it to you, it needs to be behind me. It can't be in front of me. That's the biggest change, I think. And everybody does it. And there's a lot more kicking. So it's less stop-start. You can't do the ball forward. And it's obviously there's no pads. Obviously there's pads, but it's spongy stuff or a little bit of headgear. And it's not pads. You can't really see it. So that's the main differences for me. I tend to sometimes think American football is a harder game. I don't know why, because guys have more pads, they go harder. But in rugby, you play it like football from a young age, so your body get used to it. But yeah, more flowing, you can't go forward, a lot more kicking. It's quite a sport of endurance, I think, because of not changing the offense and the defense all the time. There's 7 guys on the bench, and you can change them once in the whole game, which is 40 minutes with one break in between. So if you're in for the whole game, you're in for 40 minutes of running and hitting and tackling. And so it's a different way of training. But as I said, your body conditions playing it. But yeah, there's also quite a few similarities. The planning, the strategy, the game plan, the moves, the running angles. There's so many things that's similar. I enjoy both. Since I've been in the US, I got to know football quite well. So I really enjoy both. It's so different for me that there's elements that I really like of both of them.
What would be like the scoring? Because a lot of times you look at the scoring going, okay, so how many points was that for? Like the kicking or scoring or like how does...
So when you do it, we call it a try. Football, it's a touchdown, it's 5 points.
Okay, a touchdown.
When you kick the ball over to convert the try, it's another 2. If you have a penalty kick, it's 3. And if you have a drop kick, which is not in football, you drop the ball on the ground, you kick it, and it goes through the goalposts. That's also 3. So that's the baseline scoring of rugby.
And then the field would be, is it comparable to like American football field?
Yeah, it's got the 50-meter line, and it's got a 45, and then the 10-yard from the half.
Okay.
So there's lines in between. It's comparable. I'm not exactly sure. I think sometimes when you see, especially the big rugby stadiums and stuff, it looks maybe a little bit bigger, I think. Sometimes not, but yeah, very comparable, same size, I think.
I appreciate that kind of giving me some insight.
Yeah.
Having you on, I should have done a little more research on rugby. I've watched it in a movie, Invictus. I watched the movie,
Yes.
and it's like even watching and going, okay, I have a little bit of understanding, but I think I need some clarity on a few things. But
It's interesting, these type of sports, what they can do to create a culture. And that's why I like it so much. It's the learning platform, I think, sports, playing team sports for what you do in life. You learn so much about people, managing people, being a leader, being a servant, creating the right culture. And South Africa is no exception. It's a troubled country, but if you look at what the South African rugby team has achieved, I think we've won the World Cup now 4 times. But especially in the last, I would say, 10 years, the head coach we have there, Rassie Erasmus, he's managed to install a culture in that team that's rubbing off to the whole country. And I wish it would rub off more of people of all races just working together and just fine-tuning the strengths of all these people and getting them through the ranks and developing them before they reach the main level rugby. And then everybody meets on the same level, and there's such a lovely culture in that team. And that's why we are winning so much, I think. It's because of the culture in the teams, nothing else. There's a healthy culture and respect, and people really have relationships with each other. They understand, they know each other's personal lives. And yeah, so that's why I love team sports, man. It taught me so much about life. Definitely.
yeah, when you were talking about culture winning, I've talked to many coaches, former athletes, myself being a former athlete, about there's just certain organizations, teams that have a culture of winning. And they just
Yes.
have that culture, like what the expectations are as you come up into the program. Like, you know what the expectations are, and you don't
Yes.
lower your expectations. Some organizations, teams kind of lower their expectations. It's like, why lower your expectations for the next generation of players coming through? It's keep the expectations high,
Yeah.
be consistent and with your expectations, and just develop that culture of winning. And some just have that culture of winning, what it takes, and developing character, and that's just what it takes, that worth ethic. And I know there's so much more than just the worth ethic, but you just see teams that are just so disciplined and so worth ethic. And then you see some teams that just don't have it.
Yeah, and it's all about the culture. It's interesting because at the moment, looking at that team, just before we move on to the next thing, is they're in a phase where they need younger players. The players are aging. So it's a great opportunity to bring in young guns and teach them this culture. But now there's a lot of questions. There's one specific player, he's big, he's strong, he's brilliant. The question is, okay, he's great. We know he's great, he can play the game, but will he fit into the culture? And that's a very important question to ask. Because if he's going to disrupt the culture, he's either going to self-select or he's going to harm it. So that's how these guys are operating. And I think that's how things should happen, even in the corporate world. So yes, this is a brilliant guy. Look at his resume. Wow, this is amazing. But will he fit the culture? I think that's a very important thing to do in life, and to get a team to gel, fitting into a current healthy culture, or have an opportunity to make it healthy if you can.
Yeah, and that would be a whole nother podcast and an amazing conversation to have with some like former athletes like yourself, just to talk about the importance of culture, or like when you've been in a culture of just didn't have high expectations, wasn't a winning kind of culture. And then when you were in a culture that was like, man, a winning, just the attitude, just the
Yes.
expectations and the consistency along the way. They didn't maneuver off the path of what the expectations are for the team, for the entire organization.
Yes, I agree.
Let's go like a rugby highlight, because you played rugby up, I think talking to you like about a month ago, it was, I think, up until like age 27 or 28. So looking back at your rugby career, what was one moment on the field that still stands out to you, like a highlight that shaped you as a competitor? I'm sure there was many, but maybe just share a few highlights.
Oh, it's definitely, I think, my dad at my rugby matches. To be singling out something unique when I played rugby. He always managed to be at the games. I don't know how he did it. He was building his business. He built a lovely family business in the automotive world, and obviously working hard, but he also played hard. But when I was still, especially a student, even leaving the house, going to another city, I would just hear him in a whistle. He had a very specific whistle. I'm not going to whistle that now. I'll blow up the mics. But I knew it was him, and he was in the stand. Even if he was just watching the game, and he would whistle at the end if he had to leave, and he went again. But he was always there. So playing the game, having my dad there to support me, I think that was great. But there's so many things happened because of rugby. I think my greatest memory of, maybe it's not playing rugby. After I stopped playing, I went into the singing world, and I was fortunate to sing the national anthem for the South African team around the world. And for me, that was if I really have to single out the rugby years, because it's every young man's dream that plays rugby in South Africa to play for the Springboks. And it's a very few elite guys that make it. The margin is so small. But for me, it felt like I made it. The first time I sang the anthem, I was standing next to the guys, and I really felt like, okay, the Lord took me down a different path. This was a dream, but it actually became a reality just in a different way. He just planned it a bit differently, but I actually did make it. So I started feeling like one of them. And that's, for me, that's the ultimate rugby highlight. And being part of the squad when they toured, and seeing how the guys train, becoming friends with them, and just seeing how that culture works, for me, that's absolute highlight.
So was there a highlight like stadium that you sang at? Because I know it sounds like you at other stadiums.
My first time I did it was, and this is where my dad comes in again. I think it was 2008. I sang New Zealand versus South Africa in a stadium in my home state, in a city called Bloemfontein. And it was packed. I think the capacity of that stadium was like 52,000. It was packed. And my dad was there, and my brother. And I was looking for them. I wasn't sure. In that moment, it's the first time your legs are shaking. People always speak about, my pants are shaking. Really, you have a suit on, you can feel that suit band down there at the ankles. It's going like this. It's shaking. And then you realize, okay, this is it. This is now the moment. And then I saw him like sitting in the third or fourth row from the front of my dad just went, he gave me the thumbs up. And it was just a special moment, just going to the next level, not playing, but then with the microphone. And it's just a testimony of God's grace in your life and the plans he has for us. Always good plans.
What a special moment, and also have your dad right there too.
Yeah.
And giving you the thumbs up. I mean, that means a lot. I'm sure a lot of the listeners are wondering, would he on the podcast sing the South African national anthem for us? I won't put you on the spot.
It's interesting you asked that. Let me give you a bit of history. I did it. I think I'm correct. I did it 5 times for South Africa, which is actually a record across the world. But the anthem of South Africa is unique. It's a mix of African languages and English and Afrikaans. So maybe because of all the theory I do it this morning, it won't even sound like the anthem. So I'm not going to attempt it. But it's a split of 3 or 4 different languages. And it's interesting when you do that, people go, it's just the human race. They go, Andre, enjoy it, but don't forget the words. It's not, hey, make us proud. Let's do the South African culture. Just don't forget the words. That's what everybody says. Luckily, I didn't do that. Some other people did it. Luckily, it wasn't me, but it's always at the back of your head that it may happen. It's called Inkosi Sikelele Afrika. And it's only a small part of that anthem that's in Afrikaans, which is my native language. And because it was changed in the 1990s, where democracy started taking over in South Africa, they completely changed the anthem. So that little Afrikaans part it's the most amazing feeling when you sing that. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. Is the moment you start switching to that Afrikaans part, because rugby is so much engraved in the Afrikaans culture, is how loud the people sing it, even if you listen to it on television. So unique anthem. I always think about the old one, which is only in Afrikaans, and then you're singing the new one. It's a big difference. But it's been great doing that for me. It's one of those moments in your career that you can tick off.
With African, can you explain that language? Because I think it's a mix of 3 different languages.
Yes, so it's a mix of Dutch, Flemish, and German. It was devised when the Dutch settlers arrived in the Cape Colony, and they actually fine-tuned the Dutch language, mixing these other things into owning this new language, which everybody could understand, which includes a unique group of people called the Khoisan in South Africa. And they also started learning this language, and the African tribes also started learning it. So even today, some African tribes, they can speak Afrikaans. It's about 7 or 8 million people that speaks it in the world. If I speak it in the Netherlands, they can understand me. We can have a full conversation. If they speak slowly, we can have a full conversation. So it's funny, I had a Zoom call the other day or a Teams meeting, and there was one woman on the call. There was about 25 people, and their English accent sometimes when they speak English is similar to what we sound like. I immediately picked up she's from the Netherlands, and I just started speaking. I took a wild chance in my Afrikaans language with her in front of everybody, and everybody kept quiet, and she spoke in Dutch, and we had a full conversation. So we spoke in two languages, and we actually understood each other. How cool is that?
That's so
You know?
cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, and for the listeners too, to really to understand the language.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to your story growing up. So you started rugby, I know you mentioned at age 5, and grew up in a musical family. So what was your childhood like, and how did both rugby and music begin shaping who you would become?
Yeah, the music part, my great-grandmother was also a classical singer, and most people in her family was. My grandfather, he could play 24 instruments, and he had a great, beautiful voice. So a lot of music, and also my dad. So I grew up, my first musical was at the age of 6, and I was one of the Van Drop kids in The Sound of Music. So it was really my first introduction into theater, the stage, the lighting, the wardrobe, the rehearsals, everything, the orchestra. It's like this whole thing at age 6, and it just, you can imagine your mind is like a sponge. So I really believe that sort of set the tone for me in my life regarding what eventually happened with my music and what direction I went into. But yeah, music, a big part of our house. My dad, he always sang in choirs. He still sings in a famous choir in South Africa today, and it's great that he still does it. He's 70 years old now. So yeah, it's been an integral part of my forming years, was especially musical theater. Definitely. Yeah. And in South African culture at school, you do the theater stuff at school and you sing, but rugby was always the main thing. But I would say until my last year in high school, the singing really started ramping up, I would say. And that gave me quite a few opportunities to pursue that as a career, which I didn't thought at the time. It took a while, but eventually it did happen.
And then with rugby, now is it a school team, or is it like I know in other parts of the world, it's like a club team?
So you start off at school, then from school, if you're good enough, you play in, they call it the Craven Week or something like that. I would say if I compare it to America, it's like a state team selection.
Okay.
Then from there, if you're good enough, you can get a scholarship and go to play college rugby, which we call varsity cup or varsity rugby. And then it's really there where people pick you up to play either semi-professional or professional rugby, or you have to make a choice to do it. And that's a very competitive landscape, marketplace. Yeah, I'm sure it's like football, but what's the stats in America? Like 5% of all high school kids make college football, and I think less than 1% makes NFL. So similar stats if you take the numbers in consideration, I think. But yeah, that's the path you go. So my path of rugby really went from school to university. University, I played first division club rugby, which is a big thing in South Africa. And then, yeah, obviously then the singing thing came along, which completely changed the direction of my life in my 20s.
So how did you balance that regards to rugby and be a musician? Because I think after university, you still played for a while.
I did. I stopped at age 24. I actually stopped young. And then I just worked for my dad for quite a bit of while. And then at age 28, I played, 27. They so basically begged me to please make a comeback. He's still so young, play the game. So I did train. I did play again. I played first division again. It was my most successful season, I would say. But in that season, I got this amazing call to go for a music audition for Sony Music. And then I played one season and my professional singing career started. Can you believe? And then that started at 28. And then for 10 years, I didn't play. I was completely focused on my career. And then I did a mad thing. I got invited 10 years after that to play in a rugby championship. And I trained 4 months for it. My dad said, "You are 38 years old. These guys are 21, 22, in their 20s. What are you doing?" So I did train. I did do it. I have some regrets today that I did it. I picked up some injuries. But I did it because I wanted my sons to see I can still play the game. That's actually why I did it. And it was fun. It wasn't so fun afterwards, but it was fun while I played. But then you become aware of, you think you're fast and you think you look fast, but then everybody tells you look very slow. It's done.
Was your dad there and gave you the thumbs up?
He
Hey,
did.
look
He
at my
was there.
son doing it at 38.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He was there. He was there.
With kind of just focusing on rugby for a minute, and a lot of athletes have in any kind of sports, even when people go transition from a job to a job, but that transition for an athlete, that you play this, like you start, like you said, like at age 5 or a young age, and then you stepped away at 24, and then you step back in at 27 for a year. I think a lot of athletes have that transition. I've spoken to a lot of former athletes, just not college athletes, but professional athletes too. That transition can feel like they're losing a part of their identity. What was that
Yep.
season like for you as a man when you stepped away maybe at 24? Like you said, it was pretty young.
That was, I wouldn't say it was such a massive thing at 24, because when I stepped away, I knew that maybe I would do it again. I wasn't sure if the singing thing would work, because that's not a guarantee, but I knew that just while things in my life, those years just settled down, I would play again. So it wasn't like, okay, this is the end forever. So that wasn't so bad. But when I started playing again, 27 or whatever, I knew that I'm now in my prime, and I want to make use of this opportunity. But then the singing thing came along. So it came to an abrupt end really quickly. So it wasn't so bad then, because I went from the one thing, I shifted that one thing into the singing. So there wasn't a transition. My big transition came when I moved from the secular world of singing into worship. I suddenly didn't know where I was. And that mainly occurred when I really moved to the US. That was like I was retiring from professional sports on my career. It was like a hard stop for me. So that was a really hard transition, to be honest with you. It took me quite a while to get that out of my system. And it's now 6 years later, and I think there's still elements of it that I'm not completely rid of. And I think if you speak to maybe a guy like Ben, he will tell you the same thing. It takes a while to get cemented into something new. But in this season, this is the opportunity to realize where your identity really is. It's not in anything you do. And actually, it's not in that. It's in the Lord, and it's in the season you're in, and where He's planted you right now. That's where I think. So that was my main transition, and that was hard. You can believe moving from one country to another with your family, and then doing something completely different. That was the big transition for me, and I was 40 years old when I did that. So that was like people said, "What are you doing? Are you mad? Why are you doing this?" But it was really a call from the Lord. That's what it was, and it still is.
Amen, brother. No, I appreciate you sharing that and why God brought you to the United States and what you're doing now. But go back and share with the listeners about that. It sounds like that age 24, around that age, we're really that you got a contract with Sony. What were you singing? Where were you singing? Because it sounds like you did some international singing. Share with us about that.
Yeah, so in that time, before I really got the contract, I was really in the musical theater world, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed playing in musicals. I did a lot of musicals. Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Grease, all the musicals. It was there, and we could do it, and it was great. And I really enjoyed that season. It really taught me a lot. And when I think back, it was a massive school for me for what came next, which was going for the audition at Sony Music. They started a band in South Africa. I didn't know that at the time. And I'm not sure if people in the US will know this band, but it's not a typical boy band. It's a boy band / I would say, bordering man band. It's a band called Il Divo. It was a European band, 4 guys in suits. If you go and search for them, it's 2 words, Il and then Divo. They sing pop classical music. It's folk, mainly classical voices, but there's pop sounds in their voices as well. So a quartet. As a band Westlife, which is more, or the Backstreet Boys, which is more pop. This is more classical, stylish, the guys in suits, and more classical approach to the music. Sony Music decided they wanted to create a group like this in South Africa. So that happened in that age, 27, 28, and there was more than 500 guys that went for this audition. It was a 3-month process. Eventually, I reached the final 17 for the final auditions. And eventually, after that last day, I was picked as one of the 4 guys. And that's really where the musical journey really kicked up a notch. And things really happened quickly. I mean, the first night we met each other, we did the final auditions. That first night we did the shoot off. The first CD cover shoot was done that night on the spot after auditions. The first single was ready and written. It was recorded the next morning, and 14 days after that, it was released, and it was gold status in another 14 days. And then your life suddenly completely changes like this. Suddenly, everybody knows your name. You still live in a small town and you're going to the bank and everybody treats you different, but you're still the same Andre. It's like, I didn't change. It's like this thing happened now, but now people treat you different. They treat you differently. So, man, that's a whole story. But that's a life-changing moment, which I still believe. And when I look back, it's just how the Lord works. It's how He has plans for you, how He pushes you in a direction. I have many stories like that with my family and my kids, where there was just change of direction, where the Lord is heavily involved in what He wants you to do. But that's where the musical thing really happened in my late 20s.
Now, did you travel to like areas of Europe, maybe other parts of the world where you traveled to?
That whole thing started and it happened really quickly, very successful. And this is a great story to share. We were invited to sing. We did some touring in Cape Town, and then there was this corporate skincare company in South Africa that sponsored us. And they had Halle Berry booked for an event to speak at one of their events. And she was busy shooting a movie in Cape Town. So we said, yo, we'd come and sing a few songs, and we'd love to meet her, give her a few promotional CDs. You never know, she comes back to America, goes to Hollywood, it lands on somebody's table, they like it, they find you. Boom, that's how life works. You have to knock on these doors all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went there and getting ready to sing, and unfortunately she never came through. She never pitched, but she did send a video. So we missed that opportunity. But long story short, the promotional package ended up with one of the band members' mother, and she was in her hometown. And I think she was at the hairdresser. And this woman at the hairdresser said, I know the father of then Charlene Woodstock. Now, Charlene Woodstock is an Olympic swimmer from South Africa. And she was I think it was 2011 or 2010, she was engaged to Prince Albert from Monaco. And she said, I know the father of Charlene, and I'm going to give him these promotional items. I know he's flying to Monaco next week, and you can maybe give it to somebody. You never know. So long story short, indeed that happened. He flew to Monaco. A week after that, Sony Music got a call. They said, we want to fly these guys in. This is the palace calling. And the prince wants to meet them. The princess to be wants to meet them. They want you guys to sing at the wedding. So completely changes everything again. They fly us to Monaco. And we stay at the palace in Monaco. We meet Prince Albert, all the royal family, obviously Charlene, which is South African. And when we arrive, he knows every single word of every song we sing in our native language, Afrikaans. He sings with our music, the Prince of Monaco. So it was quite impressive to see that he really liked it. But long story short, yeah, we ended up singing at the wedding, the royal wedding in 2010 in the casino in Monaco. And it was an incredible experience. It was just a life-changing moment. And that really put us on a path where we started really touring in Europe, not just Asia, and doing big stuff in Germany. And it gave us a lot of momentum, I would say, those 3-4 years. Recording an album in London, just seeing so many things, sharing the stage with so many people, just learning so many things as we went along. But it was a roller coaster ride for sure. Absolutely.
So did you ever tour in the United States, or was it mainly in just kind of Europe?
We never toured in the United States. It was never there was, I would say in 2016, there was a meeting and it was really close. We almost got signed in New York with Sony Music in the US. It was a really slow call. It was the Friday, I'll never forget it. We had a meeting with the bosses of Sony in South Africa. They said, if we do this deal, Monday you guys need to give us a thumbs up. You're moving to America, all of you, families, everybody. One of the band members then Monday decided he's not up for it. He's not going to do it. So that really stopped the whole transaction, actually. We had to get a new band member. And it didn't work in the long term. But eventually, because of that whole thing, I reached the US in a completely different story, which I can share. But we never toured America, the whole world, but never America. So it was quite an interesting time.
Share with us now that transition, I believe it was like in 2020, that you made that kind of life transition to move your family from South Africa to, while you're supporting the University of Minnesota. So
Yeah.
on this podcast, to Minnesota, and then eventually to Charlotte. So what kind of prompted that move? I know you shared a little bit about that, but if you can share a little more. And then what were some of the biggest culture or maybe personal adjustments coming to the United States?
Yeah, what prompted the move, I met a guy in Canada. He's just an incredible singer. His name is Mark Masery. And he wrote me a song in 2012 that I translated into my language that did really well. It was just one of those those anointed songs. And we became friends, me and Mark, but we could never meet each other because we were always flying all over the show and we could never sync up calendars. But we really became friends on a digital level and WhatsApp and stuff like that, just chatting and getting to know each other. And then in 2018, he said, "Hey man, I want to give you a call. Let's connect." So we had a chat, a WhatsApp call one evening, and he said, "What do you think about the idea of creating a man band?" I went, "What is a man band?" He said, it's just when you stop doing a boy band stuff, no six packs, no 4 hours in the gym every day. It's just a man band, more relaxed, but it's going to be a worship man band." And I immediately thought, this is something that I want to pursue. Because at that stage, I released already 2 worship albums in South Africa, and the Lord was clearly pushing me into that world of ministry. I said, yes. So yeah, got my visa, and then I flew to Nashville in 2018. I met Mark. Then UTech picked me up at the airport, and it's the first time in my whole career that I met somebody that's taller than me, 6'7". And I was just laughing. I said, this is the first for me. It's funny. I feel a bit small standing next to you. Sometimes they call me and Ben, sometimes the Twin Towers. In any case, so I met Ben, and yeah, we went to the studio. Mark was waiting for us there. Oh, we first went to Bill Gaither. And he said, "Oh, what do you guys sing?" So we spent like a whole afternoon with Bill in his studio, singing songs, doing harmonies. He wanted to listen to us. And then the thing really kicked off. We spent a week in Nashville and we wrote 6 songs and recorded everything and got it down, and it just worked. And I'll never forget, I think the 3rd night, we just started sharing our life stories together, me and Ben and Mark. And we just started praying. At 10 o'clock at night, we started praying. And we prayed until 4:30 a.m. that next morning. It was like a whole night of prayer and worship, sharing life stories, and just realizing the calling the Lord gave us as 3 guys, just going from secular music and sports and whatever into a worship ministry and writing music with a different purpose. And we actually recorded a song that next day, and that changed a lot of things in all 3 of us, the lives we had at that stage. And that's really brought me to the US, because we started really getting a lot of inquiries and going to sing everywhere and speak to people, going to churches, going to theaters, doing worship events. And I've started flying to the US, like I would say I was 3 weeks in the US, 2-3 weeks in South Africa. It was like 3 weeks. And that the flying just became brutal. It just became too hectic for us, me balancing the family life and all the flying. And then eventually we did a worship event at a church in Minnesota one night. And it was 2 nights, Friday and a Saturday. And Monday, I got a call from the pastor, and he said, "Man, I know you want a visa, and we need a worship director in the church. And we was willing to accommodate you, your schedule, building out the band. If you can help us just establish teams and building the worship team, you can travel 2-3 weeks, be here for 1 weekend, just operate in the week." And yeah, I saw that as the Lord just opening a door to come to the US, and we applied for the visas and we came. And that's how I landed in Minnesota. It was obviously to be close to Ben and just be 2-hour flight or whatever to Canada, where Mark was at Toronto, and we had a studio over there. And so be close to each other. And we arrived, as I said, in the middle of COVID, 2020, August. And then it was such a busy second half of that year. And obviously everything got canceled for us. And we couldn't get Mark out of Canada. So we had to do some digital stuff, which we made plans and it worked, and then it stopped working. And people wanted to see people in person again. And it was just a challenge to get everything started again. And we all just went our separate routes and doing our own thing. We had to make a plan. But that's, long story short, how I ended up in the US, is because of this band, worship band and music, and which is still obviously what I'm doing today.
Now, how long did your man band, I think they call it, stay
Yes.
together, the 3 of you, I believe it was?
We tried making it work. I would say we really stopped in the part of 2022. We just said, okay, this is now not going to work. It's just to get it started again. It was just too much. We couldn't get it going. It was logistical issues. And then Mark also, he got an opportunity to become one of the Canadian tenors, which we couldn't really at that stage take away from him. For him and his family, he's still a part of the Canadian tenors. So they're quite a big band. So he's doing that. Ben, he's got this amazing skill to be a public speaker, and he's picked that up again big time. And it's, as we speak today, it's going really well with that, and he's making a massive impact in company culture. And I started just slowly carving out my own little way of doing things. And I went my way and I did my stuff. Yeah, but we're still great friends. There's some talks. Maybe we'll do some stuff this year. We'll see on request. Not chasing it again, but it is very interesting when the three vocals comes together. It's very powerful, very unique. It's got a unique sound, and there's a lot of stories and testimonies, even now more than ever, I think. So there may be some opportunity for us to do some little things here and there. If we can just impact people in a way, we'll do it. But it was a great season of learning and growing, and it brought me to the US, which I'm thankful for today.
So you've been in the United States now for 6 years. I know you were traveling here for a couple of years. What were some of the biggest maybe cultural or like personal adjustments for you and your family?
Interesting question. It's you grow up watching American movies in South Africa. You think you know everything about America, the culture, the people, but it's so different in different states. It's also very different. And just the things, I think there's more similarities in American culture to South African Afrikaans culture than we thought at the beginning. I think it's still very conservative, like we are. I think it's religious based. I think now more than ever, it's coming back. And there's a lot of similarities with barbecue and motorsport and sports and music. There's a lot of things that's very similar, I think. But yeah, still, it's another country and people do things a bit different. And at the beginning, you need to learn how to speak in a different English. Use different words because we use like UK English, and then people will just go, sorry, can you just repeat that? Or I didn't really understand. Or you write an email and then they go, and you clearly see quickly that it wasn't understood correctly. So just adapting to the way of our communication works. That was, for me, the biggest change, I think.
Now, I know you're friends with Reese Lloyd and Ben Utek that both played professional football, and you've known them for a few years. You built a meaningful friendship with these men. How important has brotherhood been in your journey, especially transitioning from countries and careers?
Oh, it's huge. It's one of the most important things. I think as men, that's where we make a big mistake. With the pridefulness we have, we tend to think we can do it alone. We can be lone wolves, or things get tough. We don't want to speak about things, or we're too prideful, and then we try and soak it up or eat it up alone, and it's wrong. And I think that's what the devil wants. He wants us apart. He doesn't want us together because iron sharpens iron. It's very important for me, and especially coming to a new country. These guys has been incredible. We've become brothers, not just friends. And I've met many more guys like that in America. And that for me, that's the most amazing positive thing that I've experienced since I've been here. It's like absolutely being able to create a brotherhood if you're open to it. And also that there's a big need for it, for men to operate like that in that capacity as brothers. So without that, I think it wouldn't have been possible for me to still be here or make it work, to be honest with you. That support structure and just being held accountable and holding other people accountable, you feel valued. It's again that it's almost like a spider web of being in the team. It's like you have to be in each other's lives all the time. It's the team culture again. And obviously these guys knows it just as I do. And that carries the fruit in your life. It's walking life together as families. I would say to whoever's listening today, if you're walking alone, you have to get plugged into a men's group or somewhere at the church and go and find this brotherhood. It's there. We think it's not, it's there. You'll be surprised. And it will bless you more than you can think of, definitely.
And that's the purpose of really the start of this podcast, Men Pursuing More, was really to bring brothers or bring men together. Yeah. Some may not be believers, and they just hear some of the messages from other men, and then they say, I'm going to have to check this out. I'm going to have to maybe find a church or find a believer, or they just have their own journey. We all know that. It's your own journey. We can't force anything upon anybody. It's all that. It's going to be your journey. And I found my journey with Jesus, your journey. And that was kind of the purpose. I've done a few episodes, which is called the Brotherhood Exchange, where I brought men on, and we just talked about this brotherhood, how important that is, and that bond. And really, that was the purpose of this, really, to really help, really empower and uplift men, that they can listen in on these episodes on Men Pursuing More podcast. And if whatever takeaways it might help them move forward in their journey.
Yes, and I think that if you don't know where to find that, yes, obviously, if you can find the right church, it's there. And there's guys that wants to have you a part of it. I even see it very prevalent in the corporate world. I work in quite a big company. It's called Sonic Automotive. It's a big automotive company in America. And it's prevalent in Sonic, the guys I work with. There's a brotherhood, there's a healthy culture, there's people reaching out on a personal level, wanting to get to know you and to know you as a person. And it's very prevalent to experience that in the corporate world. So I think that's incredible in today's times.
Now, share with us, you shared about your faith, but how important has your faith been along your journey to really help you through the challenges of life? Life just throws things at you that, and some men just don't know. I just have to work through it. It's a challenge. And then you're just going to try to work through it on your own. It's all up to me. And some crash and burn, some maybe they make it their way through it, but there's still challenges going forward. But we're all going to have challenges in their life. But how has that faith journey really been important for you?
Oh, it's the most important thing for me. Maybe a bit different, and maybe there's somebody out there that is in the same capacity as me. That's a worship leader, and because I'm so involved with music still, as a worship leader, you get attacked on different levels as well, and you have to be on the platform and leading a team and leading the church in song, which is not a show. You want people to be participating and you want them to worship. That's the idea of being a worship leader, and you being in the correct space. And even if things go wrong. And I've just really experienced how the Lord has even used me in the darkest places that I've been, or the lowest of lowest. He just keeps using you. And you just need to make sure that you wake up in the morning and stay obedient. And that's the most difficult thing. Stay obedient to what the Lord has called you to do. And your ministry is between your feet. In my capacity, I'm in the corporate world, yes, but I'm also involved in music. And if you're only in the corporate world, your ministry is between your feet. And make sure you use that opportunity, but be grounded in faith, even if it goes wrong. It's easy to maybe get lazy when things go well, and get lazy in your walk with the Lord, and you lose spiritual discipline. And that's pivotal to staying on the right course, is to have that spiritual discipline, even if it goes well, because it's no guarantee that it's going to stay that way. But it's in the valleys where you make the difference and when you grow. And for me, it's been quite a few valleys, I must be honest with you. But the Lord has been so faithful to us. And I think that's enforced my faith and my belief of hope. And the Lord plans good stuff. And that these challenges, they're always there, but they become low impact. It's like you wear a bulletproof vest, the armor of God. You feel them, but they're not stinging anymore. As you grow older, they're not stinging as hard. You just go on, and that's your faith growing, because you know what the Lord has in store, and He knows the end game. So yeah, that's the most important thing for me. It's my faith, and music is my worship language. That's the gift that the Lord gave me. I would sit and worship on my own just for hours if I can, and I do it a lot, even just preparing for worship events. And that's my time where I ground myself in the Lord. This music.
And just some takeaways from that about just the word obedient, how important that is, and that discipline. And we've already shared this, but about that brotherhood, about having brothers
Yes.
around you that can really sow into you and help you along the journey instead of, okay, you're not alone in this.
Yes. And speaking to them, if you wake up in the morning and it's a bad day or you get attacked, you just phone those guys. Hey, I don't have a good day today. I need your help. Pray for me. Do stuff, meet each other for coffee, go for prayer walks. Me and Ben, we used to do prayer walks when I lived in Minnesota. It's the one thing I missed the most. We just would walk for miles and just pray. We as men, we need that. We need to cut off from the world. Stop the chasing everything you think you're chasing. Stop chasing that stuff and chase the Lord, and do it in stillness and focus on that. That's a very important thing we need to do. It becomes very difficult as you progress in your career because things tend to speed up. We have to slow it down, I think.
Well, as we kind of wrap this up, I want to give you an opportunity for some shout outs to those, not just across the United States, but across the globe, that have really impacted you along the way.
Yeah, first of all, obviously my dad, he's the first shout out I'm going to give, because he's just been a solid foundation of my life in terms of what I want to do. If I wanted to do stuff, he's always been very supportive of me. Man, it's difficult to shout out a lot of people. My dad, I have to really put him at the top. In the US, yes, definitely guys like Ben, definitely a guy like Reese, which is in Charlotte, and we've become great friends. But if I really have to single out people in America, it's Ben, and he became my brother. We feel like brothers, but there's so many of them. But yeah, those two guys in my recent years of life, and obviously shouting out my wife, if I skip that part. The Bible says that they are the women in our lives. They are the Ebenezer, the rock. and they are the advisors. And just seeing how she also transformed and changed and developed in the last 6 years in America. But just for me, and I wish I did it earlier, if the men listening to this podcast, listen to your wife. When you're young, you're like a young bull and you want to do stuff, but take the advice, listen more. They think differently about life. It's the way the Lord designed them to give you a perspective that you cannot have. Our brains do not function in that capacity. In most of the time, not most of the time, 100% of the time, if you listen to that advice, you will make decisions grounded in the Lord and in the setup of marriage, and it will be successful. It will be successful most of the times. But when we take control and we make it the other way around without them and without the Lord, it tends to backfire. And I've done that in my life. Everybody has. I still do sometimes. I think I'm too smart and I do it on my own and it doesn't work. So listen to your wife. That's shout out wise, if I can think quickly. It's the 3 persons I can shout out in the last 6 years of my life. And obviously, right at the top is my relationship with the Lord. It's changed so much in the last 6 years for the good. And that empowers you to share that story with other men. And the more you share the story, the more you'll remember details, the more impactful it will be. And we tend to forget the details of our story because we don't share it enough. And then it doesn't have the impact that the Lord designed it to have. It's be raw, be open. And in that brotherhood, share your things like to the bone, and it will have fruit. Most definitely. I've seen it.
And wrapping this up, what else would you like to share about this podcast called Men Pursuing More? So what does pursuing more mean to you today? And what would you say to men who feel called to something bigger? Maybe they're struggling right now and I need some support, I need some direction, but are hesitant about stepping into it.
I would say, as the Bible says 365 times, don't be afraid. I think the world has created a culture for us where we as men operate out of a spirit of fear. Don't be afraid. And it's easy for me to say it now, but I can say it because I've done it. I really came to the US with 8 suitcases and I started from scratch. And it's completely transformed my family life and what happened to my kids. And because if you step out in obedience and not being afraid, the fruit you will see in your family first. That's the most important thing, and that will carry fruit into other people's lives. And don't be afraid. Just do things. Life is too short not to try it because we are afraid or uncertain or too proud to seek advice. Come back to that brotherhood, seek advice and do it. Just go for it. Your ministry is between your feet. Don't let opportunities slip you by because you don't want to live in that capacity. Oh, what if I've done this? What if I've done this? I should have done this. That's why I decided to come to the US. I said to my wife, I don't want to look back when I'm 45, which I'm now, and go back. When we were 40 years old, we had this opportunity. We never took it. What could have happened? Don't be in that space ever. Just pursue every single thing. And obviously seek the Lord before you move with your wife. That's the most important part as a unit.
I love that. It's like how you ended that up. It's like with your wife. Don't you, it's just kind of planned together that you're moving together in that direction, wherever you might be moving. Like you moved from South Africa to the United States. So, Andre, I want to thank you so much for your willingness to share your journey, your heart, your wisdom, what you've been able to share to the listeners. And where can the listeners find you, follow your story, and stay connected with your music and ministry?
The main platform I use, I'm still old school, is my Facebook page, my music page. It's Andre Venter Music or Andre in the Worship. And I'm not as active anymore, but there's every second week or whatever, there's a new video and new music and they can listen to stuff. I'm mainly involved in currently just going to churches, worshiping, helping worship teams, working with worship leaders. But I tend to share a lot of the stuff I do in that world. But Andre Venter Music on Facebook. And I can see more of my story and my journey. And there's so many old videos and when I was much younger as well. So it's interesting to see the story there unfold on that page, but that's the main space they can follow me at.
Now on that website, can they also find your music with Ben and is it Mark up in Canada?
So they will find the music and the band's name was Reborn. And if you search online, all the platforms, it's called Reborn the Group. And if they search Reborn the Group, they will find, I think there's 6 or 7 songs, but there's so many videos available, but 6 beautiful songs we've written. And there's a lot of songs written especially for men. If the guys listen to that, there's a song called Man I Meant to Be. Go and listen to Man I Meant to Be. It's a nice message for men to listen to, definitely.
All right, that's a wrap with Andre Venter. And I want to thank you for being part of Men Pursuing More podcast.